Ms. Glaser, welcome to CCTV News.
Thank you for having me on the show.
We've seen some different approaches or different strategies or different understanding about what the future should be like in the Asia-Pacific region. You talk about China, and there are other countries who work with China very closely, rather regarding the United States as a destabilizing factor. Some countries do. It might be a minority. And there are other countries, such as the Philippines or others, who are changing, apparently, strategically, about what their position should be toward the United States, toward China, and their position in the region. What do you make of these different kinds of diversity of voices, and what would that mean for the U.S. decision?
Well, every country in the region wants to protect its own interests, and none of the countries in the Asia-Pacific region really wants to have to choose fundamentally between the U.S. and China. So even an ally like Japan of the United States wants to have a good relationship with China. And it would be a failed policy if either Beijing or Washington were to try to press countries to choose. I think that's a big mistake. Every country is just trying to balance its interests. Those that are geographically very close to China are especially leery of engaging in actions in which they're too close to the United States. So we see countries like Cambodia and Laos, for example, that lean more towards China politically. Countries that are farther away and those that have disputes with China over maritime territory, for example, they often want to align with the United States or position themselves in the middle. The Philippines is a very special case. It's been a U.S. ally for a long, long time, and I think it remains to be seen whether or not it is repositioning itself. One thing that President Duterte has set as a goal in the near term is to get the Filipino fishermen to be able to return to Scarborough Shoal. So I think that's his near-term goal. Whether or not he's going to fundamentally alter, weaken the alliance relationship with the United States, I think remains to be seen. There's a lot of support for him in the Philippines, but primarily because of his anti-drug campaign, not because of his anti-American statements and actions.
So what you're saying, Ms. Glaser, seems to me is suggesting no matter what others' positions are, the U.S. policy toward the Asia-Pacific region will always remain the same, and the role the U.S. plays will always remain the same? Or there has been a lack of thinking about what the U.S. role should be, given the changes and possible changes of different countries' strategic positioning of themselves in the Asia-Pacific region?
Well, I think it's unavoidable to react to some extent to changes that are taking place. But that doesn't ultimately change U.S. strategy and U.S. interests. But I believe that fundamentally, most countries in the region want the United States to maintain a presence, to not have a confrontation with China, but to help influence China's choices so that China rises peacefully and other countries can have more room to maneuver. So I think U.S. strategy, of course, will respond to what is happening in the region. But I think our interests, we are an Asia-Pacific power. The United States has long been present in this region, and I think will continue to be so in the future.
After the chaotic situation of the tribunal ruling in the South China Sea, China believes it shouldn't be part or any part of the future negotiations. And that specific tribunal has been illegal to begin with, and China do not accept any of the result. Well, others, for example, the Philippines with the new administration, seem to have a very different view about that ruling. And also, the President Duterte is to visit China to further discuss with China about future ties. At this critical juncture, what do you think would be the smart choices countries can make regarding what happened in the past?
I don't think that he wants to put this issue front and center in his discussions with China. But there is a potential road forward for improvement in China's relations with the Philippines that could defuse some of the tensions in the South China Sea.
What does that mean then for the United States if China and the Philippines can work together and bring a peaceful solution to the previous and earlier conflicts?
Well, in my view, there would be a potential convergence between what China and the Philippines would do and then American interests. So if China's relations with the Philippines can improve and these actions don't take place, then I think there is less pressure on the United States to continue to conduct the kind of operations that China objects to.
We saw so many debates going on all at the same time about many issues. But one of the most undecided factors, shall I say, in every debate is about what's next for the United States. Of course, you have a presidential election cycle going on right now, but many are interested in understanding what's likely to be the direction. Of course, you have very different candidates at this moment. They have totally different views about the world. But from your perspective, where is the United States looking at for the near future?
Well, the United States has various issues that it is quite concerned about. Some are in the Middle East, some are in Europe, some are in Asia. And it will in part depend on what happens in those regions as to where U.S. attention and resources are focused. My personal view as an expert on Asia is that I believe that Asia should be among the highest priorities of the next U.S. president. We have threats here in the Asia-Pacific region, and we have opportunities. There are expectations of countries that we will be here that I think we need to meet because we have credibility issues. Countries here are concerned about U.S. staying power. There are scenarios one could imagine that if the United States were not present in this region, that could potentially lead to a lot of instability.
Well, we all understand that people's foreign policies, countries' foreign policies are designed for their own national interests. Well, there are concerns from others, but eventually what is the United States, do you think, should be looking at in the Asia-Pacific region? The opportunities you talk about, what are these opportunities for Washington?
Well, the opportunities for the United States are to expand our relevance, our partnerships, to work with other countries, to strengthen institutions in this region, along with other countries, multilateral cooperation, bilateral, trilateral cooperation. We've already seen quite a bit of change in recent years. U.S., China, and South Korea are doing more. U.S., ASEAN. We are cooperating in new ways. There's always greater potential for the U.S. and China to cooperate, but frankly, it is easier in areas outside the Asia-Pacific region to cooperate than in this region because of the fact that it's closer to China. But I continue to believe that on issues like North Korea, our interests don't completely coincide, but they overlap. And I think that when a new president is inaugurated in the U.S. on January 20th, that the North Korean nuclear issue is going to be very, very high on that agenda, and that the U.S. president is going to look to China, as many presidents have done, to try and figure out how to solve this problem, because it has become, for the United States, increasingly an existential threat. It is not just a theoretical threat. The pace of nuclear and missile tests of North Korea has become very dangerous, that under a 4-year term of a new president, that it is quite possible that North Korea will be able to miniaturize a warhead, put it on an ICBM, and deliver it to the continental United States. And that's a threat the United States cannot accept. It must respond.
But how well do you think a new administration, given your knowledge of your own politics back at home, be able to handle these strategic issues, not only the DPRK nuclear issue, but also the South China Sea issue, for example, and also some of the other issues such as the future of Taiwan in the region? the future of relations between Japan and the United States, just to mention a few. How much equipped with intelligence and with wisdom do you think the new administration will be able to handle it, given the fact we don't even know who will be in the new administration?
Well, personalities matter, so we do have to see who the U.S. president is.
Particularly this time.
Yes, this is a particularly unusual situation, but I do believe that the United States is already, to some extent, on the right path in Asia. There's much more that can be done, but I believe that President Obama has laid a very, very strong foundation. And I think the big question for the new president regarding this region and our relations with the region is just how we balance all of our relationships. Is the U.S.-China relationship the top priority? Is our alliances? What's the relations between our ties with China, with our partners, and our alliances? How do we fit all of those together? And I think that the Obama administration has been successful in both expanding cooperation with China and then also managing the growing competition, and particularly strategic competition between our two countries. And I think that will continue, and that a new American president has to be prepared with a strategy to do that. Because if we do not handle our relationship with China well, the rest of the region becomes very nervous, and then the rebalance is probably then bound to fail. So I remain optimistic, but I think that there will be unexpected challenges for the United States, and not just in the Asia-Pacific region. I think the biggest question mark is whether events somewhere else, like in the Middle East, once again pull U.S. attention away from the Asia-Pacific region. And some countries might like to see that, but there are others that I think would not.
Thank you so much, Ms. Glaser, for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much.